Hello, boys and girls. Mr. Palast here. So nice to see you. I have an awesome book today about the moon. I've always wondered about the moon, something I've always thought about. So this is the Moon book by Gail Gibbons. It has so much information here. Okay. As the sun sets at the end of each day, the sky becomes darker and darker. On many clear nights, our moon shines brightly in the night sky. A star burns gases that gives off heat and light. The sun is a star. A planet reflects sunlight and revolves around the sun. Earth is a planet. Our moon is the brightest and biggest light in our night sky. It outshines all the stars and planets which appear as small points of light. Some planets have moons. Earth has one. Earth and the moon 238,900 miles away, which seems far. It's actually not that far. Our moon looks big and bright because it is so close to Earth compared to the faraway stars and planets. It is about 238,900 miles away. Sunlight. The moon is about 2,000 miles in diameter and about 6,800 miles around. Earth is about 8,000 miles in diameter and about 25,000 miles around. The moon makes no light of its own to shine. It is bright in the night sky because it reflects the sunlight. It is about 1/4 the size of Earth. It is made up of rock and dust. There is no air or sign of life. Astronomers study the planet, their moons, and the stars. An orbit is a path of one object around another. Most astronomers and other scientists think our moon formed about 4.5 billion years ago. Some believe something collided with Earth that tossed out a cloud of rock and debris. While orbiting around the Earth, the rock and debris came together to form the moon. Oh, that's interesting. So many theories, right? In ancient times, people thought the moon was a powerful god or goddess. The Romans called their moon goddess Luna. In Greece, the moon goddess was Selene, who rode through the sky in a silver chariot. Some American Indian nations believed the moon and the sun were brother and sister gods. Stories and legends were told about the shapes and shadows that show on the moon's surface. Some people said the moon showed a man's face, the man in the moon, who was imprisoned there for stealing. Others told of moon demons living there. Here we go. Earth-Moon orbit. A satellite is an object orbiting around a larger one. The moon is Earth's only natural satellite. It takes about 1 month for the moon to travel around Earth. The phases of the moon. The moon makes one complete rotation for each complete trip around Earth. Thus, the same side of the moon is always facing Earth. Earth, the moon. The moon appears to change shape, but it doesn't. The different shapes we see are called phases of the moon. We are seeing different amounts of light being reflected on the moon. How much light we see depends on the position of Earth, moon, and the sun. So there's a new moon, and during a new moon, the moon is almost directly between the sun and the Earth. The moon looks dark. We see no reflected light. That's a new moon. Okay. There's a crescent moon. The moon is waxing. When the lit surface we see is getting bigger. In a few days, a bit of sunlit side of the moon shows. It forms a crescent. First quarter moon. When the moon is a quarter of its way around Earth, it is in its first quarter phase. We see it as half lit. It is sometimes called a half moon. Very cool. Gibbous moon. When the moon is waxing between a first quarter moon and a full moon, it is called a gibbous moon. Take a look at that. Full moon, we know that one. About 2 weeks have passed since the new moon. Now the entire face of the moon we see shines. The gibbous moon. The moon is waning, when the lit surface we see is getting smaller. When the moon is waning between a full moon and a last quarter moon, it is a gibbous moon once again. Last quarter moon. When the moon is 3/4 of its way around Earth, it is in its last quarter phase. Again, we see it as half lit. It is sometimes called a half moon. Crescent moon. Once again, we see a small sliver of moon shining in the sky. New moon. It takes the moon about 1 month to go through its entire set of phases. People used to know the time of the month by watching the moon's phases. We've come a long way. Solar eclipse. There's the sunlight. The moon's orbit around the sun is usually tilted slightly compared to Earth's orbit around the sun. Because of this, the moon cannot exactly line up between the sun and the Earth. But when the moon's orbit is not tilted, and the moon lines up exactly between the sun and the Earth, a solar eclipse happens. A solar eclipse project. Here's how to make a sun projector to see a picture of a solar eclipse. Now, this is very important, boys and girls. There's a warning here. Never look directly at a solar eclipse. The sun's rays can hurt your eyes. Absolutely, it can make you blind. So never look directly at the sun. And this project, if you're willing to do it, make sure a parent is around. Poke a pin through the center of a piece of heavy paper that is a little bigger than this book. Stand with your back to the sun. Hold the projector at your shoulder so sunlight shines through the hole. Hold another piece of heavy paper in your hand. This is your screen. Move both papers until an image of the eclipse appears on the screen. Oh, that's cool. The moon's shadow falls on the Earth. A solar eclipse can last up to 7.5 minutes. That's a long time. Lunar eclipse. When the sun, Earth, and moon are exactly lined up, a lunar eclipse happens. As in a solar eclipse, the moon's orbit is not tilted. The Earth blocks off the sunlight that usually lights up the moon. The moon has a reddish glow. That is so cool. Lunar comes from luna, the Latin word for moon. A lunar eclipse can last up to 3.5 hours. A high tide happens about every 13 hours. The moon affects the oceans too. The moon's pull, called gravity, on the oceans is strong enough to cause tides. Tides are the daily rising and falling of the ocean's waters. A low tide happens about every 13 hours. This is because the moon takes about 25 hours to come back to the same place in the sky. It was the night before. Tide difference varies around the world. High tide and low tide. Sailors are very aware of that. Binoculars, telescope. Observatory. Some night sky gazers and astronomers can get a close-up view of the moon by looking through binoculars. Others look through telescopes. Some huge telescopes are used at observatories. Oh, look at this. There's a mountain on the moon, a valley, a crater, a plain, also called the sea. A close-up view of the moon's surface shows dark patches astronomers call plains or seas. Other areas are covered with craters, mountains, and valleys. The moon's craters were formed between 3.5 and 4.5 billion years ago when meteors pounded its surface. So cool. I love learning about the moon. Lunar III, front and back. Wow, it looks so different on the back because we only see the front of the moon. For centuries, people have wanted to know more about the moon. In 1959, the Russian spacecraft Lunar III transmitted to Earth the first picture of the far side or back of the moon. There aren't as many dark areas on the side as on the side we see from Earth. Yeah, fascinating. Surveyor I, Apollo 8. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy made a comment to put Americans on the moon before the end of the decade. At first, many Americans unmanned spacecrafts were sent. Pictures were taken. Then Surveyor I landed on the moon in 1966. It sent back information about the moon's surface. The first man orbited the moon was made by Apollo 8 astronomers in 1968. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Ed Buzz Aldrin of the Apollo 11 mission became the first men to walk on the moon. Amazing. I want to go there. There were 5 more Apollo landings on the moon. The last one, Apollo 17, was in 1972. The astronauts did experiments and gathered samples. Astronomers and other scientists were able to learn more about the history and nature of our moon. On a clear night when the moon is in the sky, gaze up at it. We are still learning more about our closest neighbor, the moon. And that's it, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed it. The Moon Book by Gail Gibbons. See you soon.